Welcome to today's analysis. We are basically strapping in today for a deeply fascinating dive into one of the most incredible feats of modern engineering. We're talking about the secret of the SpaceX Starship and exactly how it manages to master its ascent into space.
So I've got a question for you. Have you ever actually wondered how a massive 5,000-ton rocket actually reaches space without completely failing? I mean, it's a question that honestly borders on science fiction, right? Until you really unpack the brutal physics behind it. When you're launching a vehicle of this sheer magnitude, the stakes are unbelievably high. We're talking about a situation where, if there's even the absolute slightest mistake, like a fraction of a second delay or just a tiny miscalculation in thrust, the whole thing fails. Total failure. There's literally no room for good enough when you're aiming for orbit. It demands flawless, absolute perfection.
5,000. That is 5,000 tons of weight. Just try to wrap your head around the sheer crushing mass of that behemoth for a second. We're not talking about some small atmospheric probe here. This is literally a skyscraper made of steel, volatile propellants, and advanced avionics, just sitting there on a pad, fighting against the entire gravitational well of the Earth. You really have to respect that immense gravity penalty before you can even begin to appreciate the genius of the engineering here. Pushing 5,000 metric tons straight up into the sky, that requires an absolutely absurd amount of energy. Now, to get that massive structure off the ground, engineers are constantly battling what's known as the tyranny of the rocket equation, which basically means that most of a rocket's mass isn't actually the payload at the top, the whole reason for the trip in the first place. The vast majority of the vehicle is entirely dedicated to housing the incredibly heavy, powerful lower boosters and, of course, the massive amount of fuel they guzzle. It's just a harsh reality of physics. To move that precious cargo up top, you need a monstrous amount of raw muscle at the bottom.
And at ignition? Well, it is an act of pure, controlled violence. Those heavy lower boosters really just have one single monumental task. They have to generate a thrust-to-weight ratio high enough to physically tear that 5,000-ton rocket away from the rigid ground and heave it into the sky. It's an incredibly brutal, highly energetic phase of heavy lifting, where the ship is just screaming off the launch pad, trying to push out of the thickest part of the lower atmosphere against honestly all odds.
But as you might guess, this brute force vertical drag race doesn't last forever. As the rocket screams into the sky, it hits a critical altitude right around 80 kilometers. Honestly, right around that 70 to 80 kilometer mark, we're hitting the edge of the atmosphere. The aerodynamic pressures change completely, and a massive shift in the flight profile has to happen. Because at this exact height, those huge boosters that just did all that violent lifting, they're suddenly empty. Their fuel is spent, their primary job is done, and literally in an instant, they transition from being raw power to massive, thousands of ton dead weight. So at this altitude, the brute force phase is officially over. And as mission engineers like to put it, now happens the most interesting scene. Think about it. We are incredibly high up, traveling at hypersonic speeds, and this crucial high-stakes maneuver has to happen right now to shed that massive dead weight without losing the vehicle's kinetic energy. A highly specialized process has to take over immediately to separate the stages, and this is where the real magic of modern aerospace engineering actually kicks in. Normally, traditional logic dictates a clean break, right? You'd cut the booster engines, detach the old stage, let it drop away, and then finally, you'd ignite the new upper engines. But Starship doesn't do that. It utilizes a much more aggressive, totally seamless choreography. First, the upper main engine is commanded to fire early, while the stages are still firmly connected. Yeah, you heard that right. Only after that new engine is already rapidly burning and ripping through the inner stage do the old boosters finally detach and fall away. And because the upper engine is already fully lit and pushing hard, the rocket just continues its ascent with completely smooth, non-stop acceleration. There's no coasting, there is zero drop in speed.
Now, this elegant, rapid-fire sequence actually has a name. It's called hot staging. It's basically the secret process of firing a rocket's upper stage engines while it's still fully attached to the lower stage. Think of it kind of like passing a baton in an Olympic relay race, where neither runner slows down for even a fraction of a second during the handoff. By igniting those upper engines while they're still mechanically linked, you completely eliminate that dangerous zero-gravity gap in thrust where precious upward momentum could be lost.
And the impact of mastering this precise process, that is exactly what makes the SpaceX Starship so incredibly powerful. This isn't just about building larger fuel tanks, It showcases highly advanced engineering solving what basically look like impossible physics. I mean, igniting a massive, super-chilled rocket engine directly against the metal dome of the booster immediately below it, that generates immense, terrifying heat and crushing overpressure. Engineering a system that can actually withstand that violent ignition right on top of itself, all while traveling thousands of miles an hour. That's what ensures the rocket just keeps pushing seamlessly into the cosmos.
So, we've seen the sheer, crushing mass of a 5,000-ton behemoth. We've talked about the violent thrust needed just to escape Earth and the absolute razor-sharp precision of hot staging that prevents any loss of momentum. It's wild to think about. But with hot staging unlocking such massive power and allowing for this incredibly smooth, non-stop acceleration, how far into the unknown will Starship take us next? Because if human engineering can master this kind of flawless transition here at the bleeding edge of our atmosphere, the possibilities for where this technology can ultimately reach, they are truly limitless.